What's up, everybody? Amidst all the talk and speculation about the changes and new content that'll come with the release of Overwatch 2, one topic which hasn't been touched on much yet is the fate of Overwatch's events following the release of the sequel. Will it have new events and game modes? Will players still be able to unlock skins and cosmetics from the original ones? In today's video, I'll be covering the information we do have regarding the future of events, and offer some theories for how Blizzard is likely to handle them as time goes on. This is Master EN Gamer, and real quick, I'd like to remind you to subscribe and pop that bell icon if you enjoy this video to stay up to date on all future Overwatch news and content. But now, let's take a look at the future of events in Overwatch 2. So to start, while Blizzard has so far revealed a decent amount of information regarding the direction Overwatch will take with its sequel, they've actually said very little regarding events specifically. The most notable bit of information we've heard on them comes from @JaruPants on Twitter, who documented a Q&A done with Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan back in November. One of the things Jeff reportedly discussed in this Q&A was how events would change in Overwatch 2. For Overwatch/Overwatch 2, they're gonna start rethinking the event calendar, possibly retiring some. Jeff thinks Overwatch 2 should bring in more new events. Designing them, he's referring to Sid Meier's rule of thirds: 1/3 new, 1/3 the same, 1/3 improved. For clarification, Sid Meier's rule of thirds is a design philosophy where, when making a game sequel, a good balance for the sequel's content is to make 1/3 of it brand new stuff, 1/3 of it the same from the original, and 1/3 an improved version of content from the old game. This makes the sequel feel familiar to the original, but also adds enough new and revised content to make it feel fresh and stand out as a discernibly independent title. While it's unknown if Blizzard plans to apply this kind of philosophy to just the events or Overwatch 2 as a whole, we do know that the sequel will be getting some pretty substantial core design changes, as I discussed extensively in one of the recent videos on my channel. But beyond this instance, there are two other mentions of sequel events I'd like to point out. One of these came again from Jeff Kaplan in a Game Informer interview, where he comments on the state of Archive's PvE missions in the sequel.
Will we ever see previous events like Uprising or Retribution come back in the hero missions?
We know our fans love the Archives events, so we'll figure out some way to try to make those viable for players again.
The other is a possible mention of events on the official Overwatch 2 website. On the page where it shows off the new hero looks, it has a brief blurb which states, "Overwatch 2 evolves the look and feel of the world with more dynamic environments, larger scale battles, additional in-game storytelling events, and improved atmospheric effects and shadows." It's unclear whether this is referring to events in the traditional sense that we've seen so far in Overwatch 1, the Hero Challenge mini-events which often accompany short stories, or something else new entirely, such as dynamic map events which maybe change on a match-to-match basis. But going off the sparse information we do have, what can we deduce about how Blizzard will handle events going forward? While nothing is official yet, and I'm sure not even Blizzard themselves are at this point 100% sure how they'll handle it, there are a few things which seem very likely. First and foremost, the Archives and Anniversary events will either get the axe or undergo substantial changes. While this may be upsetting to hear, given that they are by far two of the more popular events, their alterations are inevitable based on the direction Blizzard will be taking Overwatch 2. The Archives event's primary focus is on story and PvE, both of which will become permanent focuses for the core gameplay of the sequel. Therefore, it doesn't make much sense for Blizzard to keep the existing PvE event missions when bigger and better versions of them will be available year-round in the new PvE modes. As Jeff implied in the interview I played earlier, those missions won't be coming back as we know them, but they will ideally exist in some form with the updated game engine and new hero talent system. Similarly, the Anniversary event isn't likely to return because, well, it's highly unlikely that Overwatch 2 will launch on the same day that Overwatch 1 launched back in 2016. We could potentially see a new Anniversary event for whenever the sequel launches, or maybe some kind of similarly celebratory event at some other point in the year. But the Overwatch 1 Anniversary event we all know and love would be a bit of an awkward event to port over, so I don't expect it to really be one that lives on in the sequel. Inverse Conversely, Lunar New Year, Halloween Terror, and Winter Wonderland are the least likely events to change, given that they are based directly on major real-world holidays. While I suspect that they, too, will be undergoing some kind of alterations, as suggested by Jeff's mention of the rule of thirds, they are unlikely to experience any thematic changes in Overwatch 2. I'm sure it's safe to expect that they will still be themed around Korean/Chinese culture, spooky ghouls, and winter holidays, respectively. And last, we are left with the pariah of Overwatch events, Summer Games. This one falls in the middle, as while its hybrid theme of sports and summer are universal enough to likely be seen in whatever replaces it in Overwatch 2, it also feels like it could stand to make itself a bit more universal. The event was originally called Summer Games to celebrate the Summer Olympics, which ran during the first summer of Overwatch's release, and ever since then, retaining that same name has always felt a bit restricting. While we've seen a good number of beach-themed skins in the event as well, a more generic summer name for the event would probably be more fitting. Or, depending on how exactly Blizzard treats events in the sequel, I could easily see its successor actually being split into two or more separate events spaced out across the summer. Keep in mind, there's no guarantee that Overwatch 2 will even retain the 6 yearly events format, and it's entirely possible that, instead, we will see events happening more frequently, but being smaller in scale because of that. A change like this does beg the question, though, of what would happen to the old event cosmetics in such a radically revised event structure, which is the perfect segue into the next major topic to consider. What will happen to Overwatch 1 event skins and cosmetics following the launch of Overwatch 2? For example, even if there is still a Halloween event, will it still have all the old Halloween event items? We of course know that old skins we've already unlocked will carry over into the sequel, but will new players still be able to unlock them for the first time after the sequel launches? While just shifting over the cosmetics seems like an easy transition for the events based on real-world holidays, it'd be more challenging to do for events like Archives and Anniversary, which, as I said, are likely to undergo some significant changes. But even then, do we actually want Blizzard to keep the old cosmetics in the new events? Depending on how far they go with revising things in the sequel, it might make more sense to just start fresh without being bound to a system that's compatible with old event items. Now, knowing Blizzard, I'd be amazed if you couldn't somehow unlock the old event skins in Overwatch 2. They're already going through all the effort of porting them over into the new engine and graphics, so they might as well make them obtainable for new players as well. If nothing else, it'd just be another way for Blizzard to make money. However, I also don't think we'll necessarily see them made available in the new game's events. Depending on how much events change, and especially if loot boxes end up falling by the wayside, as it seems they might, keeping the new events beholden to old cosmetics might not even work for one reason or another. For example, while it's proven to be a rather unpopular idea in the community, Jeff has acknowledged Blizzard's openness to implementing some form of battle pass system. If this is the path they take, it wouldn't make sense to include old cosmetics in the battle pass, since they'd already be owned by a large portion of the player base. Basically, there are 3 ways I could see Blizzard handling the return of old event skins in Overwatch 2. Scenario 1, the way new cosmetics are unlocked in new events is incompatible with old cosmetics, and thus old cosmetics become unobtainable after the launch of Overwatch 2. This is the least likely scenario in my opinion, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Scenario 2. The new events are designed in such a way that their cosmetic system is either identical or very similar to the system we have now. There will be loot boxes or some other way of unlocking cosmetics, in addition to the ability to buy items from the hero gallery using in-game credits. This scenario seems fairly likely, as it's worked well so far in Overwatch 1, and will allow Blizzard to easily keep making money off of the old cosmetics they've already designed. And Scenario 3. New event cosmetics are unlocked in a way that's incompatible with old event items, so instead, Blizzard dumps all the old items into some kind of separate virtual antique shop. This shop could end up being a subset of whatever main shop or hero gallery ends up existing in the sequel, and furthermore could be either open year-round for players to buy old loot, or have an alternating inventory where certain items are only available around the time they were available in the original. For example, Witch Mercy would only be available to buy in the antique shop during whichever event Overwatch 2 has in place of Halloween Terror. Of these three possibilities, I think the third is by far the most interesting. I'd love to see Blizzard get really fresh and creative with how they do events in the future, but at the same time, I would prefer if there are still ways for old cosmetics to be unlocked by newer players. If they do go with a battle pass system or something else more popular, a virtual antique shop could be a great way to offer old items to new players while still allowing Blizzard to make some extra cash. Another major thing to consider beyond cosmetics is the fate of event game modes. We of course already heard Jeff's input on what'll happen to the Archives missions, but what about the others? Surely they wouldn't take away Lucio Ball, the event mode which is so universally loved that they've barely touched it in the past 4 years. Once again, this is a tricky question. While most limited time game modes are pretty hit or miss for most players, the one which I find myself most curious to see the outcome of is Junkenstein's Revenge. Unlike the Archives missions, Junkenstein isn't based on the game's actual lore, or at least not the de facto canon story. However, from a mechanical gameplay standpoint, it's pretty much on par with the other PvE modes. In fact, I'd be shocked if Blizzard didn't implement the wave-based defensive PvE format of Junkenstein's Revenge in at least some of the Overwatch 2 story and hero missions. It's a great alternative to the offensive Archives modes we've seen, and the two could even work well together, with individual missions featuring both offensive and defensive segments. But if that is the case, then does that mean Junkenstein's Revenge will succumb to the same fate as Archives when the sequel releases? To be honest, it probably will. But I actually see that as a great opportunity to introduce Junkenstein 2.0. That's right, who's to say that Overwatch 2 events will only apply to the PvP side of things? Why not also add limited time event features to the PvE as well, such as a full-fledged Junkenstein's Revenge campaign? Given that the Junkenstein story is already something of a novelty, how cool would it be for Blizzard to take the new Overwatch 2 PvE format and craft a proper Halloween PvE campaign based on that same alternate universe? This would certainly be a welcome replacement for the original, and would be a great way for them to make use of the new features the sequel has to offer. And heck, why limit it to just Halloween? We could easily see similar themed PvE campaigns for Lunar New Year and Winter Wonderland based on their own respective holidays. Given that you don't need to worry about keeping the mode competitively viable when working in PvE, there's loads of ways Blizzard could holidayify the existing Overwatch 2 missions, or add new limited time ones to celebrate the various events. Again, we don't know for sure yet if this is something Blizzard will end up doing, but it's a great idea that I could easily see them jumping on. As for the other PvP event modes though, who knows what'll happen. Lucio Ball at this point is a bit too big of a meme for me to believe that it won't be returning in some form or another, but we'll just have to wait and see. More than anything, it'd probably depend on what becomes of the arcade once Overwatch 2 launches, which is a topic more than deserving of getting its own separate video. But let me know your thoughts on Overwatch 2 events by dropping a comment below. Do you think old cosmetics will be available to unlock in the new events? What sort of new event game modes would you like to see using the features of the sequel? Be sure to subscribe, pop that bell, follow me on Twitter at MasterENGamer, and check out my Discord server to never miss any future Overwatch content. If you'd like to support my videos, then hit that join button down below to become a channel member and unlock some cool rewards like the people you see here. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.